Conference of the Pwrs by Rudyard Kipling. Life liveth but in life, and doth not roam to other lands if all be well at home. Solid as ocean foam, quoth ocean foam. The room was blue with the smoke of 3 pipes and a cigar. The leave season had opened in India, and the first fruits on this side of the water were Tick Bowyer, of the 45th Bengal Cavalry, who called on me, after 3 years' absence, to discuss old things which had happened. Fate, who always does her work handsomely, sent up the same staircase with the same hour. The infant, fresh from Upper Burma, and he and Bowyer, looking out of my window, saw walking in the street one Nevin, late in a Gurkha regiment, which had been through the Black Mountain expedition. They yelled to him to come up, and the whole street was aware that they desired him to come up, and he came up, and there followed pandemonium in my room, because we had foregathered from the ends of the earth, and 3 of us were on a holiday, and none of us were 25, and all the delights of all London lay waiting our pleasure. Bowyer took the only other chair. The infant, by right of his bulk, the sofa, and Nevin, being a little man, sat cross-legged on top of the revolving bookcase, and we all said, "Who'd have thought it?" and "What are you doing here?" till speculation was exhausted and the talk went over to an inevitable shop. Bowyer was full of a great scheme for winning a military attaché-ship at St. Petersburg. Nevin had hopes of the Staff College, and the infant had been moving heaven and earth and the Horse Guards for a commission in the Egyptian army. "What's the use of that?" said Nevin, twirling round on the bookcase. "Oh, heaps! Course, if you get stuck with a Fenian regiment, you're sold. But if you're appointed a Sudanese lot, you're in clover. They are first-class fighting men. And just think of the eligible central position of Egypt in the next row." This was putting the match to a magazine. We all began to explain the Central Asian question offhand, flinging army corps from the Helmand to Kashmir with more than Russian recklessness. Each of the boys made for himself a war to his own liking, and when we had settled all the details of Armageddon, killed all our second senior officers, handled a division apiece, and nearly torn the Atlas in 2 in attempts to explain our theories, Bowyer must lift up his voice above the clamor and cry, "Anyhow, it'll be hell of a row," in tones that carried conviction far down the staircase. Entered, unperceived in the smoke, William the Silent. "Gentleman to see you, sir," said he, and disappeared, leaving in his stead none other than Mr. Eustace Cleaver. William would have introduced the Dragon of Wantley with equal disregard of present company. "I beg your pardon. I didn't know that there was anybody with you. But it was not seemly to allow Mr. Cleaver to depart. He was a great man. The boys remained where they were, for any movement would have choked up the little room. Only when they saw his grey hairs, they stood on their feet, and when the infant caught the name, he said, Did you write that book, called As It Was in the Beginning?" Mr. Cleaver admitted that he had written the book. Then I don't know how to thank you, sir," said the infant, flushing pink. "I was brought up in the country you wrote about. All my people lived there, and I read the book in camp on the Hindelsmoos. The Halein and I knew every stick and stone, and the dialect too, and by Jove, it was just like being at home and hearing the country people talk. Nevin, you know As It Was in the Beginning? So does Bowyer." Mr. Cleaver had tasted as much praise, public and private, as one man may safely swallow, but it seemed to me that the outspoken admiration in the infant's eyes and the little stir in the company came home to him very nearly indeed. "Won't you take the sofa?" said the infant. "I'll sit on Bowyer's chair, and—" Here he looked at me to spur me to my duties as a host, but I was watching the novelist's face. Cleaver had not the least intention of going away, but settled himself on the sofa. Following the first great law of the army, which says all property is common except money, and you've only got to ask the next man for that, the infant offered tobacco and drink. It was the least he could do, but not the most lavish praise in the world held half as much appreciation and reverence as the infant's simple, "Say when, sir," above the long glass. Cleaver said when, and more there too, for he was golden talker, and he sat in the midst of hero worship devoid of all taint of self-interest. The boys asked him of the birth of his book, and whether it was hard to write, and how his notions came to him, and he answered with the same absolute simplicity as he was questioned. His big eyes twinkled. He dug his long, thin hands into his gray beard and tugged it as he grew animated. He dropped little by little from the peculiar pinching of the broader vowels, the indefinable that runs through the speech of the pundit caste, and to the elaborate choice of words, to free-mouthed owls and oys, and for him at least, unfettered colloquialisms. He could not altogether understand the boys, who hung upon his words so reverently. The line of chin-strap that still showed white and untanned on cheekbone and jaw, the steadfast young eyes puckered at the corners of the lids, with much staring through red-hot sunshine, the slow, untroubled breathing, and the curious, crisp, curt speech that seemed to puzzle him equally. He could create men and women and send them to the uttermost ends of the earth to help delight and comfort. He knew every mood of the fields and could interpret them to the cities, and he knew the hearts of many in the city and the country. But he had hardly, in 40 years, come in contact with the thing which is called a subaltern of the line. He told the boys this in his own way. "Well, how should you?" said the infant. You're quite different, you see, sir." The infant expressed his ideas in his tone rather than his words, but Cleaver understood the compliment. "We're only subs," said the Nevin. "We aren't exactly the sort of men you meet much in your life, I suppose." "That's true," said Cleaver. "I chiefly live among men who write and paint and sculpt and so forth. We have our own talk and our own interests, and the outer world doesn't trouble us much." "That must be awfully jolly," said Bolio, at a venture. "We have our own shop too, but 'tisn't half as interesting as yours, of course. You know all the men you've ever done anything. We only knock about from place to place, and we do nothing." "The army's a very lazy profession if you choose to make it so," said Nevin. "When there's nothing going on, there's nothing going on, and you lie up." "Or you're trying to get a billet somewhere to be ready for the next show," said the infant with a chuckle. "To me," said Cleaver softly, "the whole idea of warfare seems so foreign and unnatural, so essentially vulgar, if I may say so, that I can hardly appreciate your sensations. Of course, though, any change from life in garrison towns must be a godsend to you." Like many homestaying Englishmen, Cleaver believed that the newspaper phrase he quoted covered the whole duty of the army, whose toils enabled him to enjoy his many-sided life in peace. The remark was not a happy one, for Bolio had just come off the frontier. The infant had been on the war-path for nearly 18 months, and the little red man Nevin 2 months before had been sleeping under the stars at peril of his life. But none of them tried to explain, till I ventured to point out that they had all seen service and were not used to idling. Cleaver took in the idea slowly. "Seen service?" he said. Then, as a child might ask, Tell me everything about everything." "How do you mean?" said the infant, delighted at being directly appealed to by the great man. "Good heavens, how am I to make you understand if you can't see? In the first place, what's your age?" 23 next July," said the infant promptly. Cleaver questioned the others with his eyes. "I'm 24, said Nevin. "And I'm 22, said Bolio. "And you've all seen service?" "We've knocked about a little bit, sir, but the infant's the war-worn veteran. He's had 2 years' work in Upper Burma," said Nevin. "When you say work, what do you mean, you extraordinary creatures?" "Explain it, infant," said Nevin. "Oh, keeping things in order generally and running about after little Dakus, that's Dakotas, and so on. There's nothing to explain." "Make that young Leviathan speak," said Cleaver impatiently above his glass. "How can he speak?" I said. "He's done the work. It's the two don't go together. But infant, you're ordered to brook." "What about? I'll try. Book about a Dakur." You're on heaps of them," said Nevin. "What in the world does that mean? Has the army a language of its own?" The infant turned very red. He was afraid he was being laughed at, and he detested talking before outsiders. But it was the author of As It Was in the Beginning who waited. "It's all so new to me," pleaded Cleaver. And you said you liked my book." This was a direct appeal that infant could understand, and he began, rather flurriedly, with much slang bred of nervousness. "Pull me up, sir, if I say anything you don't follow. About 6 months before I took my leave out of Burma, I was on the Helindatalone, up near the Shan States, where 6 Tommies, private soldiers that is, and another subaltern, a year senior to me. The Burmese business was a subalterns' war, and our forces were split up into little detachments, all running about the country and trying to keep the Dakotas quiet. The Dakotas were having a first-class time, filling women up with kerosene and setting them alight and burning villages and crucifying people. The wonder in Eustace Cleaver's eyes deepened. He could not quite realize the cross still existed in any form. "Have you ever seen a crucifixion?" said he. "Of course not. Shouldn't have allowed it if I had, but I've seen the corpses. The Dakotas had a trick of sending a crucified corpse down the river on a raft, just to show that they were keeping their tail up and enjoying themselves. Well, that was the kind of people I had to deal with." "Alone?" said Cleaver. Solitude of the soul he could understand, none better, but he never in the body moved 10 miles from his fellows. "I had my men, but the rest of it was pretty much alone. The nearest post that could give me orders was 15 miles away, and we used to heliograph to them. And we used to give us orders the same way. Too many orders." "Who was your CO?" said Bolio. "Bounderby, Major. Puka Bounderby. More bounder than Puka. He went out up Bamo way, shot or cut down last year," said the infant. "What are these interludes in a strange tongue?" said Cleaver to me. "Professional information, like the Mississippi pilot's talk," said I. "He did not approve of his major, who died a violent death. Go on, infant." "Far too many orders. You couldn't take the Tommies out for 2 days that's expedition, without being blown up for not asking leave. The whole country was humming with the Cotties. I used to send out spies or act on their information. As soon as a man came in and told me of a gang in hiding, I'd take 30 men with some grub, go out and look for them, while the other subaltern lay doggo in camp." "Lay? Pardon, but how did he lie?" said Cleaver. "Lay doggo, lay quiet. With the other 30 men, when I came back, he'd take out his half of the men and have a good time of his own." "Who was he?" said Bolio. "Carter DC of the Arungabatis. Good chap, but too zaberdusty, and went Bokor 5 days out of 7. He's gone out too. Don't interrupt a man." Cleaver looked at me helplessly at me. The other subaltern, I translated swiftly, came from a native regiment and was overbearing in his demeanor. He suffered from the fever of the country and is now dead. Go on, infant. "After a bit, we got into a bit of trouble for using the men on frivolous occasions, and so I used to put in my signaller under arrest to prevent him from reading the helio orders. Then I'd go out and leave a message to be sent an hour after I got clear of the camp. Something like this: 'Received important information, start in an hour unless countermanded.' If I was ordered back, it didn't much matter. I swore the CO's watch was wrong, or something, and when I came back. The Tommies enjoyed the fun, and, oh yes, there was one Tommy who was the bard of the detachment. He used to make up verses on everything that happened." "What sort of verses?" said Cleaver. Lovely verses, and the Tommies used to sing 'em. There was one song with a chorus. It said something like this." The infant dropped into the true barrack room twang. "Thwee-ba, the Burman king, did a very foolish thing. When he mustered hostile forces on a rail, he thought little of that we were far across the sea. We would send our armies up to Mandalay." "Oh, gorgeous," said Cleaver, "and how magnificently direct. The notion of a regimental bard is new to me, but of course it must be so." "He was awfully popular with the men," said the infant. "He had them all down in rhyme as soon as we ever done anything. He was a great bard. He was always ready with an elegy when we picked up a ball. That's leader of the Dakotas." "How did you pick him up?" said Cleaver. "Oh, shot him if he wouldn't surrender." "You? Have you shot a man?" There was a subdued chuckle from all 3 boys, and it dawned on the questioner that one experience in life which was denied to himself, and he weighed the souls of men in a balance, had been shared by 3 very young gentlemen of engaging appearance. He turned round on Nevin, who had climbed to the top of the bookcase and was sitting cross-legged as before. "And have you, too?" "Think so," said Nevin sweetly. "In the Black Mountains. He was rolling cliffs onto my half company and spoiling our formation. So I took a rifle from a man and brought him down at the second shot." "Good heavens! How did you feel afterwards?" "Thirsty. I wanted to smoke too." Cleaver looked at Bolio, the youngest. Surely his hands were guiltless of blood. Bolio shook his head and laughed. "Go on, infant," he said. "And you too?" said Cleaver. "Fancy so. It was a case of a cut or be cut, with me, so I cut. 1. I couldn't do any more, sir. Cleaver looked as though he would like to ask many questions, but the infant swept on in the full tide of his tale.